So it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Robert Sedgewick. He has an impressive resume. Some of the highlights are he is a founding chair and professor in the Department of Computer Science at Princeton. He was a member for many years of the board of directors of Adobe Systems. He served on the faculty of Brown University. He has published widely in these areas, over 20 books, sold nearly 1 million copies. He's also published extensively online content. His MOOC with Kevin Wayne has been named one of the top 10 MOOCs of all time. So please join me in a warm welcome to Robert Sedgewick.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure for me to be here, and thank you very much for the invitation. I'm going to tell a story, and it's a story that's evolving. So I've been giving this talk for, I think, 5 or 6 years now, but it's a much different talk than it was 5 or 6 years ago, and I think it's going to evolve again. Let me get this guy going. I usually put a subtitle for the talk because that title's kind of boring. And I'm not sure which one I use, but here's 4 possibilities. And these are like underlying themes of what I'm talking about. So first one is that computer science is in crisis. Everywhere you go, you find computer science faculty that are carrying 2 to 3 times the load of everyone else. And not only that, we can't get faculty because they're going to incredible opportunities in industry. So it's no good solution in sight. And in fact, there was a report from the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine that said institutions have to respond with urgency to this crisis. Enrollments are going up, faculties are going down, and there seems to be no good solution. This report actually recommends that big research institutions restructure. If you have a department of computer science, you need a school of computer science. But everybody's too exhausted to take any action. So despite this report and despite the problem, nobody's really thinking or doing anything about it. And it's going to get worse. Another theme, I'll actually talk about this one a little more. CS for All has gotten a lot of press, and a lot of students are learning how to code. But that's not computer science. They're not really learning computer science. They're learning how to code. And really, we need for many, many more people to know computer science. And I'll speak to that one actually in some detail. The one that gets a lot of attention is, you're using my book, why don't you use my lectures? Why do we have hundreds of people or thousands around the country, around the world, preparing and delivering the same lecture when there's better ones available? And we know that the large live lecture format is no good. Why are we using it? The thing is that if you have well-produced online lectures, you can address both of these problems, efficient and effective. And I'll talk in a lot of detail about that one. And then the other one that's exciting is we now are on the verge of having access to education when and where the consumer wants it. It's a very, very exciting prospect, an extremely powerful idea. There's millions of professors, content creators, and there's tens or hundreds of millions of consumers, and some kind of modern 21st century marketplace that connects them turns into Uber or Netflix for education, and that's a very exciting prospect. So those are my underlying themes. But really what I'm going to give is kind of more of a historical perspective, and I'll come back and touch on these. Okay, so when I got to college actually, and when I got my PhD, it was immediate what the fundamental problem was with having to deal with computer science in a university. There's no books. I had to take a computer science course. There wasn't any computer science textbook. I got a job as a professor. They said, teach computer science. There weren't any books. It made it harder. Definitely made it harder. All the other fields had standard textbooks. But computer science is no standard textbook. It's a huge challenge from the beginning for somebody in my generation. So for me, right when I got my PhD, my area was algorithms, and I said, well, there's a lot of things that we know as PhD students at Stanford that a lot of people need to know. And the study of algorithms is a really significant body of knowledge. It's intellectually challenging, it's everywhere in modern life, and it's really critical to science and engineering. Even in the mid-70s, we could see that. And many, many more people needed to know about algorithms than did. So, I felt as a young faculty member, anyone that wanted to use a computer effectively needed to understand about the scientific method and understanding how programs behave. They need to understand data abstraction, about how to compare algorithms and predict performance. We had lots of great data structures and algorithms that we know, and we knew how to apply them to solve modern problems. And I felt all of that was a body of knowledge that was really important. And as I said, my first job was, well, okay, teach it. Look around for a book. There's no book. So that was my first central thesis as a young faculty member. Now, of course, as everyone knows, you don't succeed as a faculty member by doing this. You succeed by doing research. So this is a part-time. But by 2011, so what's that, 40 years, I have a book that I think accomplishes a lot of these goals. It's got a modern programming model. It's got classic algorithms with code. It's a model course in the ACM curriculum. And it's been through a lot of different editions, a lot of different programming languages, and every one of those was a painful decision and a huge amount of work. And it's widely used around the world, and my code is in your phone, because the engineer that coded up your phone read my book and put that code in there. And so I don't want to spend a lot of time on that process, but I put a lot of effort into that for sure. So that's my mission accomplished. And I was about the age in 2011 and my father retired, and I'm thinking about, okay, how many times a day can I play golf and everything like that. But anyway, all during this process, I was realizing that there were a lot of students that need to know about algorithms that weren't prepared to learn about algorithms. Something else was going on. And I got hired by this major university to build a computer science department. And one of the first things I figured out was we're going to have a course that can stand alongside the courses in physics, chemistry, biology, economics, and other first-year courses that students at major universities take. Same idea is that computer science is something that really everybody needs to know about at some kind of important intellectual level. And not only that, a lot of it is relatively easy to learn, easier to learn than chemistry or biology. All we have to do is work it out, lay it out, and teach it to them. And all of these things are exciting and interesting and useful for large numbers of students. In the 90s, I started on this idea. Well, I tried to get young faculty to do this, but nobody, they wanted their jobs, so they did research instead. And after a while, I figured, okay, if this is going to get done, we've got to sit down and try to do it. And try to come up with the goal of, okay, what we need is a standard introductory text in computer science. That was 1992. That was quite a while ago now. And I'll omit a lot of the challenges. My wife says when I give talks like this, I have to stress the positive. So I put all the negatives in these dark cloud slides, and you can read them for entertainment. But boy, there were a lot of challenges in dealing with this, definitely a lot. In 2016, we got the book published. Amazing. I never thought it would happen, actually. It was extremely difficult at the end. It's a book that discusses the fundamental ideas in the field for all first-year college students. We do programming in Java through data abstraction. We do theory of computing. We do intractability, computability. We do machine architecture all the way down to gates and machine language. We build a whole circuit of a whole computer. Students learn about important people who made contributions to computer science, like Turing and Boole and Shannon, von Neumann. I think all of these are as important for college students to know nowadays as Einstein or Mendel or whoever. And so now this is Princeton's most popular course by quite a bit now. It's taken by 70% of all Princeton students. All take the same course as a first course in computer science. And the idea that made it successful was it's an interdisciplinary approach where we leverage what they're learning in other science courses and in applications. And just to give a quick idea about this is that we do no toy programs. Everything is in the context of an application. So one of the easiest things to start out with is this program, which is like a 20-line Java program. That's the code that makes that ball bounce. And pretty easy to explain that to any 18-year-old their second week of college. But then if you say, you can teach them about object-oriented programming. You can say that same code, you can instantiate lots of different balls. And you can make things like that go. And then you say, well, actually, if you add a little F equals MA, which you learned in 11th grade, you can simulate a solution of the n-body problem. This is the 3-body problem. And by the way, it's essential that everyone know this because in the previous centuries, they were trying to decide if they could derive a mathematical equation for this. And now we know you can't. Computational models are what this century is all about. And this assignment is what our students do in the 4th week. And they build their own n-body models, and we have incredible things. And that's just one example. We do sound, we do imaging, we do all sorts of interesting applications that immediately engage the students. But really, this one, our point was to teach them about nested for loops, because it's n-body is a nested for loop. And when I teach about arrays, we do sound synthesis. So everything connects an important CS concept with interesting and useful application. That was a bug. So, well, we can explain about accuracy in numerical computations if we want. So anyway, it seemed like 2011, okay, now I can play golf. That book was almost done, only another 5 years. We had lots of students, but little did we know what was going to happen next. And that's what I want to talk about. So there are a lot of disruptive changes in the past 5 or 10 years, and I'll just talk about the ones that are important to this story. So first one is about libraries. So this is New Yorker in 2007, that's a long time ago now. I picked up the New Yorker, and there's an article by my colleague, Anthony Grafton, who's a historian. And he's talking about the project to renovate the New York Public Library. And in the New Yorker, he talks about how the narrow path still leads to crowded public rooms where the sunlight gleams on varnished tables and knowledge is embodied in millions of dusty, crumbling, smelly, irreplaceable documents and books. Now, I usually don't react to stuff like that, but this one, I just went right over to my computer and typed a letter to the New Yorker, and they published it. They published my letter. Because I really was feeling strongly that we need to worry about something other than old books. And my essential question, even at that time, was, how are we going to produce and disseminate knowledge with today's technology? How are we going to let people in the future know what it is that we're doing? I don't think .doc files is it, or even .pdf files. How is the stuff that I'm doing now going to be appreciated by people 50 or 100 years in the future? These are the kind of questions that we have to worry about. not whether it's dangerous to put contents of libraries on the web. So, you know, in the 20th century, universities were built around their libraries. That's how great universities attracted great scholars, was to have great libraries. And students would spend a lot of time in the library. When I was a student, I spent a lot of time in the library. Faculty member, when I was a young faculty member, I had to go to the library to look at journal articles and stuff. In the 21st century, not so much. If you talk to a faculty member in the sciences, haven't been in the library in like really a long time. But we're investing huge amounts of money in these things. I don't usually do that at Princeton, but so what's going to happen? So I think there's going to be some book museums for Grafton, that's okay, or virtual libraries where you just say, give me a book, and then the next day that book will appear. That's fine. But there's going to be some type of digital library infrastructure, and it's still evolving. Who knows what's going to happen? And somebody came up with this idea, it's actually happening. We need offices for those CS faculty. When we triple the size of our faculty, we could use old libraries. That's what they're actually doing at Brown right now. They converted the science library into offices for CS faculty. But I think it's a really critical question. At universities, do we want private industry deciding what this infrastructure is like? Or are we going to play some kind of role in how knowledge is going to get disseminated in the future? I think it's a critically important question that not enough people are worrying about. Okay, but it's a change that really has already happened. There's a lot of empty library buildings around the world. I like this one. This is a brand new library in Tianjin, China. A book lover's dream. Those aren't books, those are pictures of books. So you could do that anywhere. So I don't know if that's the future either, but that's the deal. Okay, that's number one. Okay, number two, textbooks. I think we're on a road to ruin as far as the textbook industry goes because the industry is pushing students to rent books rather than own them. I teach a senior course. It would be nice where I use complex analysis. I tell the kids, why don't you get out your complex analysis text that you used last year? Don't have it. Can't get it. They don't have books because they rent them. Terrible situation. I think, well, anyway, terrible situation. That's Princeton U Store in the 50s. I worked with a guy from France who's attracted to Princeton to come to the bookstore to see the latest books. But now the U Store website doesn't even have books on it. And I've got textbooks, and I'll talk about textbooks, but I think it's a question that comes to mind is what's going to happen with textbooks? What's the deal? The rental model doesn't really work all that well, really. And who's making the money? And who's writing these things? I don't know. And then there's this change. 2011, remember, I finished all my stuff. January of 2012, I get called into a small room. Now, our administrators don't really look like that, particularly the no stamp. But they got called into a small room saying, oh, there's this new thing going about teaching online. And you want to do it? I said, no, that is like way too much work. The expectations are going to be high. I need, the resources I'd need to produce something like that are way more than you want to pay. So that lasted for about 2 months. And they said, well, we bought into this. We're doing it anyway. Are you in or not? You have to decide by tomorrow because the press release is going out. And I said, well, I don't want somebody else to do the first MOOC in algorithms, so I have to do it. This Coursera came along, and what we realized immediately was the model that we had been forced to use to teach huge classes at Princeton because we don't have enough faculty perfectly suits our content for going online. And we were actually able to throw up our full MOOC in about 4 months' time. And that became immediately very successful. And then one thing led to another, and again, there were many, many challenges, and there was a lot of skepticism about how all this was going to work, and there were fights about ownership and resources. We actually crashed Amazon by trying to grade 100,000 programs at the same time, and so lots of bad things happened. But in the end, we have 6 courses, 6 MOOCs out there. There's 70 lectures, and I'll talk in a little more detail about these. Lots of state-of-the-art lecture slides, automatic assessments even for programs in the cloud. Student submits a program, we fire off a virtual machine and run it and test it. Coursera changed their platform and broke all our courses. We had to do it again. Algorithms are 2 of the top 10 courses on Coursera for both ratings and popularity. And I'll talk more about this later on. And there's a full story in the older version of this talk that's got more detail on some of the negatives maybe. But anyway, that's not really what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about is what happened right when I finished recording the last lecture that I recorded. It was very liberating putting these lectures online because I put a lot of effort into each lecture, and then when it was done, there was really a feeling of completion. And getting the last of 70 done, and by the end, and I'll show you a little bit, our lectures were very, very refined, put a lot of effort into them, a lot of animations and builds. And that last one had, I think, like 450 builds, 450 clicks of this thing. And I realized that I'm exhausted. I can't do that lecture again. I'd have to, I'm too old for this, but then I said, well, but if I can't do it again, nobody can do it. Who's going to do that lecture like in September? It's mid-June now. Who's going to do that lecture in September? I'm not doing it. And, it just started to think about how are we going to teach computer science at Princeton in 2 months? I'm not doing it, and you're not using my slides because you wouldn't know how to figure you'd get tripped up on the clicker. What are we going to do? And I said, we have to use the videos. We can't do the large live lecture. We have to use the videos at Princeton. And everyone else said, but it's Princeton's biggest and best course, and you're going to make that drastic change? So again, I'll leave out the details. Most of the summer was emails. And finally, there was a lot of discussion about whether it would be legal or possible and what would happen, and then all kinds of discussion. And I participated civilly in the discussion, but I knew there was no way I was going to do anything other than show the kids the videos. So I had the last live lecture. This is Princeton's biggest lecture hall. That's me over on the left, and there's students everywhere. What usually happens in a big production like that, mid-September, it's hot, really hot. It's like 90+ degrees. I actually would get reviews in the course review saying, I really enjoy watching the professor sweat. It would happen every September. It happened then. The room was too small. They had to put a bunch of students in an overflow room anyway. The students in the aisles couldn't even see the screen. The sound system cut off halfway through. That's the first lecture of Princeton's biggest and best course, which was great. That at the end of the lecture, I said, that's it. No more live lectures. Everything's online. If you missed something on this one, here's the website. And I went into a mode where I actually had a trip to India with my wife scheduled for 4 weeks, like 2 weeks after this. And every Monday I'd send the students an email saying, here's the 2 lectures you're going to watch. And there'll be a question in the exam on these lectures. They all watch the lectures. Oh, wait a minute, I'm going backwards, sorry. Sorry, that's the problem with the build. And when I got back from India, sent out a survey, what do you think of what's going on? 82% were positive or positive plus. So they absolutely loved the idea that they were actively participating or choosing when to consume the course content. So I love this one. It prepares me for a lifetime of active learning online. They don't know that there's not any other course like this out there. At least at that time they didn't know. I like this system, lets me go at my own pace. Video lectures are amazing. Those are the kinds of comments that we got. And so I didn't know what was going to happen. I was hoping that, you know, they didn't run us out on a town on a rail. And so it was great to get the 82%. And the other thing was that it was better for the course staff too. So for one thing was nobody came to office hours because they're watching the lecture. In the typical situation, most of the students are either absent, lost, or bored. But for this, nobody's absent. You have to watch the thing. You don't get lost because you pause the lecture and replay it. And as soon as you don't understand something, you pause and replay. And you don't get bored because you can run it at double speed or triple speed. So a lot of students run it at triple speed. So that they're 20 minutes. Versus, you know, you got to get up, you got to get over the lecture hall, you got to get a seat, you got to 20 minutes to get it done. There was a lot more time for interaction with students in small groups, and I'll talk more about this better. We did have some large class meetings, and the other thing was no more scheduling complications. You know, I've got, you know, a championship lacrosse game. Great, watch the videos. You know, I have practiced my religion. Great, practice your religion. Watch the videos. Doesn't matter. Tuesday before Thanksgiving, send out that same email. I don't care when you watch them. You watch the videos, but you don't have to be at that place in that time to get them watched. And another key to success, talk a little bit, is that we didn't add any new material. All we did was take out the large live lectures and replace them with videos. There's a lot of other things that we do in a big course, like they meet in small groups with graduate students and various other interactions like that. But the typical idea of flipping the class, which is what the administrators want us to do, is, oh, they've watched it and now you can create another couple of hours of material each week. And nobody wanted to do that. That's one key to success. Okay, so now our enrollments are pretty much through the roof. And you know, the next challenge is get other people to do this. My algorithms text is widely used. What about my lectures? And same thing with this new computer science course. So that's really what I'm here to talk to you about, is how can other people benefit from our experience on this. And I just want to make one point about it that motivates a lot of people. The idea that we can scale and the idea that we've developed a curriculum that is for all Princeton students gives us a big advantage. Many people have this kind of model. Every little part of the university teaches their own computer science course, including there's one for majors, but only the one for CS majors prepares them for algorithms. And remember, I think like biologists and chemists and economists, lots of people need to know algorithms. And they wouldn't be prepared from this model. We put everyone in, we get a lot more in algorithms. 40% of all Princeton students take algorithms. All Princeton students, and we have a lot of people in history and English and sociology and all those types of majors. And that number's going up. And the other thing about that is, since those numbers are so big, a lot of them are women. So we have 40% women majors, which is more than twice the national average. And that's because we come in, everybody's taking the course, everybody's equal. Not only that, if you're bored or confused, you can watch it over again until you get it, if that's what you want to do, if that's your style of learning. Whatever your style is, it's there. And we're here to tell you that our job is for you to succeed at learning this material. And for programmers, you know the term programmers, right? we just put in traps. There's things they don't know, and they don't know, they don't know. And so we can put them down a rabbit hole for a couple of days trying to solve some problem that they can't really solve. So we can appeal to large numbers of people and deal with diversity in a pretty effective manner. Now there is a problem with this story, and I already referred to it at the beginning, is that we can't continue to grow at this rate. Well, we're going to run out of students when we get to 100%, but still, even like now, however you want to measure it, by total number of student enrolls, by number of majors or whatever, at Princeton, computer science is 10% of the university, but we're only 5% of the faculty. So how do we fix that? Well, we could double the size of the CS faculty. There's no plan to do that. We could double our salaries, or we could limit enrollments to half. None of those things are going to happen. As I mentioned, this is a crisis, and sure, we're going to increase, we have authorization to increase the size of our CS faculty, but nowhere near enough to address this problem. And there's no office space until we renovate the library for our offices. So we need some kind of new model if we're going to keep on going. And what the good news is that just as I mentioned, what we had to do in order to do our job well allowed us to do MOOCs. I think the same kind of situation works here. We're dealing with huge numbers of students with small staff, and with just a little extra work, we can have amazing impact. And that's really the story that I want to tell you about. Okay, so let's remember, in fact, I looked it up. It's the first line of Princeton's purpose, statement of purpose by the trustees: produce and disseminate knowledge. So we're doing really well on the produce part. And, you know, we have research faculty that want to excellence in teaching, devotion to research simultaneously. I'll submit it's not going so well lately. Pendulum has swung a little far to the research side. I'll just submit that. We can debate that later on. So for our model, it's a pretty simple starting point is most people don't have to prepare and deliver lectures anymore, at least not big ones and big intro courses. And there's a lot of efficiency that we can obtain by just embracing technology in reasonable ways. Really focusing on the student experience than on clinging to centuries-old methods of disseminating knowledge. And as a byproduct, everybody gets more time for research. So that's really what's underlying the model. So what's the model? Well, the model that is still widely used is around textbooks. People are talking about different ideas, but if you look at most courses at most places, they have a standard textbook. The teachers adopt the textbook, the students buy it, and then the teachers prepare and deliver lectures about the contents of the textbook. And a lot of time they use our slides. When you write the book, you make the slides available, and people all around stand and read the slides. And then the local teacher assesses, grade, and certify that the students took the course. That's the model. And there's a lot of pain points. I already mentioned you've got thousands of institutions around the country, and at every one of those institutions there's a professor or multiple professors preparing and delivering a lecture on whatever, the mean value theorem or integration by parts or whatever. That's definitely inefficient. Textbook publishers are killing themselves, and again, most students in most lectures are absent, bored, or lost. I think maybe we could debate that, but I just said most. I actually believe it's like 90% are absent, bored, or lost, but let's say most. And need to do something about assessment methods. So our new model is to try to integrate some important abstractions that have been successful. So the first one is textbooks. I think the textbook is the key. You have to have a textbook for students to use to learn to study the material. And I'll talk in more detail about that. Video lectures, they go with the textbook. The abstraction of a lecture, I think, is valid. You want to introduce the material and inspire further study. You want to put some effort into doing that. Try to do it in the textbook, but the idea of a person trying to explain something is important. And nowadays you have to have web content and web services so that people can search for stuff, explore, interact with the material. And there's content types that you can't do in a book, like animations, like huge data files for code and other things like that. And then web services is more about embracing technology for assessment. So I'm going to talk about each one of these. But the idea is that we get a consistent, scalable, and flexible support of active teaching and learning. And I'll talk about each one of these components. Okay, first one is the textbook. I think textbooks are here to stay. You go to the Greeks, and as I said, it's still in widespread use. This is a way of articulating what it's reasonable for a student to know in a semester. Some author has a lifetime of experience that they want to lay down for posterity, and that's a good thing. And the other thing is that it provides consistency. You took a course that used that textbook, then in later courses they can assume that you know something about that textbook, or that you can at least go back and look it up. Oh, you rented it, you don't own it, you have to fix that part. So the challenges are, it's hard to get kids to write books nowadays, and the textbook industry isn't helping, and those are challenges. But in our world, and I'm giving you 4 examples, that for computer science, algorithms, analysis of algorithms, and analytic combinatorics, and I'll talk a little bit about what that is, we've got the books. So I already talked about Algorithms 4th edition, talked about our new computer science book, and just to, for flavor, I'll tell you about 2 other books that I have, upper level and graduate texts, that my friend who died in 2011, Philippe Flageolet, it's his life's work, his analytics combinatorics, and it really defines a field of research. And it's a very advanced topic, but it fits the model. So these are supposed to illustrate the range of the model, all the way from introductory text to graduate text. In 2011, books are dying. This is royalty income. Beyond the 90s, that seemed like a lot, but here's what's happening to royalties lately. So you can say, well, that tracks enrollments or whatever, but I think that it does have something to do with the model, and I'll talk about that. The point is, textbooks are alive and well, at least in our world. Okay, lecture. So I think there's a big change coming with the lecture. Like I said, I kind of like the abstraction, but we have this big change that I've already mentioned several times. The instructor can control the pace and direction of what's going on, although maybe we don't really want that because every student needs a different pace. And there's the idea of a community of scholars all trying to work to learn the same thing. And there's plenty of great teachers out there that enjoy attempting to inspire huge numbers of students all at the same time. But there's a lot of time and effort required to prepare those great lectures. The duplication of effort is the big one. But what research says is a big lecture like that places students in a passive role. That when you give a huge live lecture, you're telling the student attitude, whether explicit or not, is they come in, they sit there and say, okay, your job, teach me. Not my job, learn. Your job, teach me. That's it. That's passive. There's a lot of instructors that have this job that maybe don't have the skills to really do a great job. And we all know this famous quote, lecturing is that mysterious process by which the contents of the notebook of the professor are transferred to the notebook of the student without going through the mind of either. Uh, and so the question is there a practical alternative to the big live lecture? And this is the dominant way that we're disseminating knowledge nowadays, by the way. And of course, my answer is there definitely is. And one reason is the lecture presentation materials we can do way, way better than we ever did before. So people are still doing xTalk here, I notice. We have lots of blackboards at Princeton too. We went through this thing for a while where we wrote in color on plastic. People are smiling and they're still doing it. Yes, one right there. There you go. I can't believe we did this. And, you know, drawing things by hand with colored markers, it was an enormous amount of effort, preparation. And so this is like mine from, I don't know, must be 10 years now. I pray to God it's more, but whatever. Then we had PowerPoints. And a lot of people are at this level, right? You know, not effective. But what we can do now is really amazing. And this is a slide from analytic combinatorics. And I'll just use that as an example. I only did this course because my co-author died suddenly, and I knew that it was going to be up to me to carry it on. And I had developed all these skills of doing MOOCs. And I said, well, I'll do it for this. Can't be, you know. And people said, no, you can't teach math with this kind of tool. It has to be a xTalk. You have to interact with the students to show them the proof. You can't possibly teach math this way. And I found actually really you can, and it's very efficient. You get the build, so you do the derivation a step at a time. You can explain right in the thing, okay, that's what I mean by that, and I do this because of that theorem. Remember that theorem? Boom, there it is, and that's the whole derivation. I can explain this derivation to a student in the course in, I don't know, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, whereas in xTalk, you know, half an hour easy. So I can control the pace with the builds, I can give the details to support the reasoning, and I can do stuff like plots. And you can't draw those, well, you could, and fill it in with the story, and then also combinatorics is about counting things. I can lay out all the things to give people a feel for what they are. Again, you kind of could do that on the board, but these types of elements make for a very effective presentation, even in an advanced math course. And then the other thing is that we've got studios that's got, and the one at Princeton was there like empty. They use it for CNN feeds and things like that, but otherwise, so I'd be there all afternoon, and then, you know, like at 3 o'clock, Paul Krugman would come in and sit on a little stool and talk for 30 seconds and then he'd leave. But that's what the facility was there for. But anyway, there's lots of good stuff in there, but all it was just recording for posterity the one time. The actual recording sessions only last maybe 2 hours for an hour-and-a-half lecture. It's the prep that was the serious effort. And then the other thing is that if we put them online, then we make it active learning experience for the students. They choose their own pace. So I tell everyone, go look at my lectures. I like at a talk like this. You're going to be bored. Speed it up until you're not bored. That's what I tell the students. Speed it up until there's a point at which you're not going to be bored. And then back it off a little bit, and then that's how long it's going to take you to get through the lecture. Like I said, a lot of students watch at double speed. And really, everyone's pace varies throughout the course, depending on what they're feeling like that day or what they're doing, but they actively control it, and no one is absent, lost, or bored. Well, maybe some of them are bored, but still, you know, play it triple, play it 4 times. I knew this guy that had a long commute and trained himself to listen to audiobooks at 5 times. It's like, wow. And his wife was in the car with him. It drove her nuts, but you can really get through a lot of stuff that way. They actively choose the time and place they learn, and they're all different. Some say last thing in the evening, lying in bed. Some say first thing in the morning in the library. Some of them say, oh, I just do it on the team bus. Team bus has Wi-Fi nowadays. You don't even have to download them. Sedgewick and chill. So somebody posted that, and the younger among you might know what that means. I don't leave that thing on the slide. But they're always available for review. They review it till they understand it. Nobody goes to office hours, promotes diversity. And exam review is just blow through the stuff that makes sure you understand it. It's an extremely effective and efficient way to disseminate knowledge. And for my stuff, we've got online lectures for computer science and algorithms are 2-part courses, so that's 4 courses. And then analysis of algorithms, analytic combinatorics. We have about 70 lectures. I don't give live lectures anymore, haven't for 2 years, but I'm teaching 5 courses at Princeton. There's teaching 2 right now. Not only that, for virtually no extra effort, we get these things available in all different kinds of outlets. You can buy the video lectures in association with the book, or you can take the MOOC, and we've reached over 1 million people with these lectures already. So it's a very effective and efficient mode of disseminating knowledge, really a 21st century approach. Now, a lot of people say, well, what about personal interaction with the students? And I just want to say it's hard to think about without having experienced it, but it actually feels to the students like a personal interaction. They're, in the library first thing in the morning, totally interacting with me. And this is I go across campus, they all think they know me. They open the door for me, they say hi. That's thousands of students and people all around the world, 1 million people. I go to a technical conference, they all think they know me. It's not exactly personal, but, and they post stuff. And so that's, dress for the job you want, not the one you have. And somebody went, how you get all the stuff that I wear in one of the lectures. That's old copies of my books, and that's Luke Skywalker saying the sacred text. So the kids are posting stuff like that. They feel comfortable with interacting. And the other thing is, when we have the small meetings and sections, the quality of the interaction is way better than with the live lectures. Nobody's taking notes anywhere, and the interactions are more about connecting and applying ideas than about correcting for the people who are absent, lost, and bored and missed something in lecture. And the other thing is, what the teachers like is they can explore their own thing, knowing that they don't have to worry about covering the basics, because the basics are covered in the video lectures. And so they can amp up or turn down whatever it is they might want to work on. We had a parent complaint. It's the only one I'm aware of in like 3 years of doing this. And Dave August is one of my colleagues who was leading the class, did this response to the parent complaint. And this is just a guy, one of my colleagues. He didn't want to stand up there and read my slides. He'd send the email, they'll watch the lectures, and he can manage everything else, write the exams. And he said, what we focus on is outcomes and about student experience. If we were to try to cover more material and have them meet every Tuesday and Thursday, or do more of interaction in large groups, the experience would suffer. And that's absolutely the case. Get those large live lectures out of there, and you have a way, way better course. And actually, I started thinking about really the next frontier, and I've been working actually for the last year on a lecture that I'm never going to deliver live. It's a new intro lecture for analytic combinatorics. I've spent 2,000 hours on this thing. because, and it's, so one of the things it's got is this thing called a mapping. And I want to give examples of mappings. So how do I get those diagrams? Well, I find for like 20 years I've been wanting to write code to draw that diagram. It's a very simple combinatorial object, and I finally wrote the code, but it was like 2 weeks of deep hacking. Wouldn't really do that normally for a single lecture. And then once I have that, I can draw big ones. It's a great, yeah.
Hi, we're almost running out of time. And
Okay.
I have a feeling that there's a lot of questions people are going to want to ask
Okay.
you. So I was wondering if you might just save a
Speed
little
it
time
up.
for people to ask questions before we're at the hour.
Okay, I will. No, I'm getting there. I'm pretty much there, I think.
Okay.
Okay, so anyway, these are my guys. And so I think that I'm not going to be preparing. In fact, I think the question is, why would you prepare a live lecture when you can do this? Thousands of people are going to watch this lecture versus 4 people might be lost, absent, or born. Okay, so I have to go quickly, so I won't spend a lot of time on the web content. Sorry, I went a little slow. We have extensive web content associated with each course. They're fully integrated with the book. They have all kinds of content that we couldn't put in the book. Tens of thousands of files, 18 million page views last year, 3 million unique users. It's another big part of the model. And then web services is all about assessments, and I will skip through that. Let's see where I can go. No, sorry, too far. I gotta do it this way. See, I knocked out 10 slides, so I thought I'd get through quicker here. I know, but you start at 5 past, but you end at 5. I caught that. Yeah, just one point about automated assessments. It's pretty easy to build an infrastructure. So here's like 50 facts about intractability and computability. We can make a multiple choice question that has 5 answers. That's 2 million questions from 50 facts. So we can put that up. Students can self-assess. We can use it on exams. You're going to get a question like this. We're not going to tell them the 50 facts. We're just going to present them with 5 of them chosen at random. And there's many other examples like that where we can automate the assessments without sacrificing the ability to give it to large numbers of students. And we use these both in the MOOCs and at the Princeton course. And you can do it with programs too. And now I think I'm pretty much to the end. Yeah, sorry, I have to skip all that stuff. So that's the model. We have people at large universities using it. We have people in advanced courses using it. We have people in high schools using it. We have a guy in a third world university using it. All around the world in all different types of positions, and also individuals. I get emails, not quite every day, but at least every week, some individuals, I got my job because of your course, sort of thing. So that's the old model, that's the new model. And anticipating the questions, I've got a lot that I get asked, and then there'll still be time left. Okay, isn't it time consuming and difficult? Yes, it's very time consuming and difficult. I had to learn like 28 software programs, and I spent 50 to 100 hours of prep for each hour. But it's less work than writing a book, and not everyone has to do it. You can use mine. I think my administration will fire me and use your lectures. And I say, well, I worry about that myself. Actually, I'm teaching 5 courses. That's 4 people they didn't hire. And in fact, they already fired your successors by not hiring enough faculty in computer science. And it just doesn't make sense for people to be preparing and delivering the same lecture. And by the way, students are already watching my lectures. That's what they do when they have their laptop open. The administrators say, well, why don't we have more online courses? Well, it's hard to do, and you don't pay me to do that. You pay me to do research, remember? I once listed my online lectures in the CV that I present for my salary. They made me take it off. And doing a scientific study, you know, if you look into it, the scientific studies show don't do live lectures, and there's lots of things you don't do scientific studies for. I got to put up my last slide before people leave. So this is what John Hennessy said. It's happening in 2012. There's a tsunami coming. You know, some people said, well, what happened to the tsunami? This is even 2013. Our president said, well, what's happening? Online hasn't really taken over. We're still doing large live lectures. There's a lot of reasons for that, and we can discuss that in the informal thing. But for me, it looks like a tsunami. I've got a lot of online content. I got a lot of lecture videos. I'm reaching millions of people. In the 90s, I taught my own kids. But I think I'm going to be teaching my own grandchildren in the future. That's my thing.
So
that's the one I had to put up.
Questions?
So you mentioned in the beginning that it's going to be a knowledge marketplace, right? And people creating content and people consuming content in this kind of online realm, facilitated potentially by these lectures and these kind of institutions. But in your sense, have you thought about who would own the platforms, who should own the platforms, and who should actually, how best to coordinate the creation of these platforms?
Well, I try to do the analogy with textbooks. So there's publishers, and there's a connection between the author and the customer, and that's what the publisher provides. And the thing is you got to use the 21st century model. My books, I get like 15% royalty. And that's because at the time that I published my book, they had hot lead, there's all kinds of costs involved. Now there's not so much costs involved, so come up with a reasonable cost structure. Put them all out there. All I want is a nickel for every click. Now that's a lot of nickels with 18 million clicks.
I have sort of a multi-part question. One of the things you said at the beginning that I thought was very interesting was that the textbook represents what is digestible for a student in a semester.
Yeah.
And so could you know what that amount is without years of live lecture experience behind you, one? And then two, I feel like we get, so I make digital content for the math department, and I feel like we get a lot of pressure to keep putting more and more content into our one semester period. So one of the things that I have concern with in this move to digital age is that there will be sort of no bound on now what is digestible for the student.
No, I think that's an interesting issue, and it used to be I had to put everything in the book.
Yeah.
Now I have the web content, and actually the way we did the computer science book was put everything on the web, and now it's time to write the book. Okay, what am I going to pick? I'll pick that, I'll pick that, I'll pick that. And so that gave me the canvas to create the story. And so I think the web can provide that buffer. And what I imagine, is my reader reads the thing from beginning to end. Of course, nobody ever does that, but at least I imagine that when I'm creating the book.
So Stuart Firestein, who's a neuroscientist at Columbia, wrote a book called Ignorance, How It Drives Science. And he talks about how his doctoral students come in, they see a 1,400-page textbook in neuroscience, and they think that's all there is to know.
Yeah.
And what he wants them to understand is that's simply all that we know. What we don't know is much greater. And so he talks about that they need to learn how to manage ignorance, how to think in questions. So I'm wondering about how a course that, in a sense, is presenting content to them that they go over and over, how does it actually allow them to develop new lines of thinking?
Same answer. The web content, nobody's going to read all that web content. 50,000 pages of web content. You're interested in something, you search it in our own little, it's like our own little Wikipedia. And there's all kinds of open questions in there. So,
how many of your Princeton faculty colleagues are on board with you? How many others are doing this? Are you? You'd be in good company here.
We have a university president who doesn't believe in this stuff. He says we don't do this. That's for other people to do. But top 5 MOOCs in the Coursera, no, we don't do this at Princeton. Yeah. So I think but I think it's the middleman, because a lot of universities are claiming they own the courses. That's one battle that we won a long time ago at Princeton. It's my course, it's not their course. And so, but many universities are trying to get people to make courses, but they're not paying them for it. Oh, you have to still teach your other course, but please make us a MOOC, and by the way, we'll sell it and get rich off it, and you won't get anything. No surprise we're not getting a lot. That's what I meant by a modern marketplace. Give me an iTunes, or I can throw my course up, and if there are a lot of clicks on it, I do well. And I'm still happy to put analytic combinatorics up there too. So, you know, the old model, as a best-selling author, I know I was paying for everybody else's book. And I didn't even mind doing that. I just don't want somebody else getting all the money. Yeah.
So do you see this as a better way of organizing lectures, sort of the alternatives, I think it's sometimes called the flipped classroom, where someone will lecture for 10 minutes and then ask the people to vote on to ask a question, okay, how many say A, B, C, or D, and people with the clickers click in, and okay, now you gotta sort of convince one another. Do you view this way of doing things with just you and the lectures as an alternative or a better alternative, or what?
I think it's a much better alternative. It's just an effective and efficient way of allowing the student to control when and where and how they learn. And they can do a lot when they have that freedom. I would be sound asleep in that class with clickers. I mean, there are a lot of people who would be. Basically, you're kind of bringing everybody to the middle or something. I don't know. You're trying to control the pace in a very inefficient manner. Whereas with this model, the best students are getting through in 20 minutes. The others are getting through in 2 hours. It used to be that it was 1 hour totally wasted, another hour waiting in line outside the TA's office, and another hour in the TA's office. Extremely inefficient. That's what I think.
I'm sort of curious about your loyalty to textbooks, because you also wrote extraordinary textbooks. But the word textbook has text and book.
Yeah.
And text is by definition static. So you can imagine, for example, an iPad textbook. The picture could be an animation.
Yeah. No,
So what I'm doing is, the textbook and the MOOC could blur. I mean, I'm curious why you separate the two.
Because there's, it almost kills me to publish the book, right? Almost killed me. 2016, I finished that book. I didn't do anything for a year. And so, getting that thing out, I don't want to say like giving birth or whatever, but it's done, and that thing is what I know, and it's good for 10 years. And I think that's reasonable, because anything that goes out of date I can catch on the web now, and someday have to do a new edition. The difficulty of authoring and maintaining something like We Can Imagine is huge. Even our web page, I don't really love the idea of maintaining that thing. It's like, I put up there, it's under construction, don't believe anything you read here. It's 50,000 pages. How do you keep errors out of it? Yeah.
I think I just wanted to follow up on Sanjay's comment, because if we look at this in a learner-centered way, we'll find that the web content can be as effective, but potentially more effective than the textbook option, but you can present textbook content in web form. So the question is, why isn't it just lectures and web content together?
People like books. A lot of people like books still. And it's coming back, and work really hard. Since Gutenberg, that's from my Adobe experience, we know how to make beautiful books. We don't know so much about how to make beautiful web content. I think it's a big deal, yeah.
So from, sort of again at the learner-centered piece of it, if your students are mostly watching videos that they could watch without going to Princeton, what is the value out of going to a school like Princeton if most of these lectures are training into this?
Because we have a huge staff of qualified teachers whose job it is to make them succeed. and whose job it is to look them in the eye to see if they understand it and test them on it and then certify that they do. And that's a big advantage.
Sort of, continue this in a casual way. I know you have to head out at some point, but why don't we just finish up the formal part of this?
Turn off the mic.
Turn off the mic and go with something else.